Randy, it's Thursday, as you corrected me. I was hoping it was Friday. It's great to see you again.
Good to see you too, Mark.
So here we are. We're doing a leadership series video interview. Actually, I just finished with an executive with an international company out of Miami just now. So today seems to be a good video interview day, and we're going to continue the trend right now. If you could briefly just tell our audience, obviously, who you are, your organization, what you do, that'd be great.
Sure. I'm Randi Thompson. I'm the CEO and Executive Director of KidSave, an organization I co-founded with my former business partner, Terry Baugh, 15 years ago. I had spent the first 20 years of my career in public relations and marketing. And now I realized this morning I've spent almost the same amount of time, almost half of my career in the not-for-profit sector. KidSave's mission is to work to create change so that children everywhere have the opportunity to grow up in families with the opportunity to succeed, with love and the opportunity and hope to succeed. We do that through family visit models where we bring kids that people are not thinking about, particularly older children, large sibling groups, the hardest to place kids, and we bring them back in the community and have them get hosted by families who will either potentially become permanent families for them or work with them and us to find them permanent families.
Well, you are definitely making a difference, which we're going to get into in a few minutes. Obviously, you're used to working with all types of people, paid people, employees, volunteers, international. This is a leadership series. Let's start with what's your perspective of what leadership really is?
To be a leader, I think you, first of all, you have to have a vision. But almost as important as having the vision is you have to have the ability to maintain that vision, because quite often, and I'm a perfect example of it, the everyday work that I do sometimes gets me very far from why I started KidSave. I've got a little administrative and the financial things, and it's easy to lose sight of that. So a leader's got to keep the vision at all times. It's one of the reasons, I don't know if you can see, I've got kids behind me. It helps me to remember why I'm doing what I'm doing on a daily basis. Then I think you have to be able to inspire your people, motivate your people, and make decisions. You know, you can't be a leader if you're not able to make the decisions, if you're sitting there thinking about it and not getting to, the bottom line. That's, I think, something that I learned in my business career, clearly. And after you inspire people, I think you have to be able to make it a shared vision. That's the only way you're going to get people to really follow your vision and work on it. So I guess that would be my definition, and it's very hard to do in a not-for-profit.
No kidding. Well, that was my next question, which you've kind of sort of led into. And as we've talked, I've had experience when I came to the States with an international leadership development but nonprofit organization. What is the biggest difference what is the distinction of leadership in a nonprofit?
I mean, I think it's, in some ways, it's very easy to get people motivated around your cause because, you're not selling packaged goods, you're doing something that makes a difference every day in the lives of someone. But the biggest difference is there's no resources. You have, or you seldom have resources, at least in a not-for-profit like mine. We often say, the answer's money, what's the question? Because there's never enough of it. So you're working with scarce resources, and you're often not having the ability to really build leadership or to train your people because you are so resource challenged. I think that's a huge difference. On the other hand, you have something that intrinsically that what you're working on is something that really motivates people to come to work every day, and that's obviously a key.
You obviously also have to have, I guess, leadership of volunteers is different, and you tread lightly on. They have to be accountable because there's things to do, but they also know that they're volunteers. Tough leadership.
Right. I mean, probably the toughest volunteers to work with are your board leadership, because they are not only volunteering what is often very precious time, because they tend to be very senior people, and their expectation is very high of your ability to respond to them quickly. So I think volunteer management in a non-for-profit is really a very key thing, because it's important that you get a lot of people who are interested in coming in, but they don't necessarily have the kind of skill sets that you really need. And so you either have to be able to train them to develop those skills, or you're spending a lot of time with mission-driven people who can't really do the work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of your boards, how do you determine what the right leadership is for your board?
The $1,000,000 question, right?
Absolutely.
I think for us, KidSave really works hard to have the right people on our board. We started out like a lot of not-for-profits. You start with closely held friends, a lawyer, accountant, and the founders, which is exactly what we did. And then over time, it's like, oh my gosh, there's an able-bodied person who wants to be on our board, and they come on in. But I think today we're very selective about what we do. We're looking for people who ideally will have had some board experience, but if they haven't had board experience, I really like to see people who've at least availed themselves of one of the many, many avenues that there are today for board training. There's so many different things, even just reading Board Source. But in LA here, there's the Riordan Leadership Institute that does train young leaders. So I like to see people that have at least availed themselves of that if they haven't had board experience. But we're looking for people who really understand what it means to be on a board, and that's that they understand their fiduciary responsibility for leadership, for giving, for fundraising, and for being an ambassador. And often people do not understand that when they're going on a board. They think it's really fun to be on a board and you can go and direct. KidSave actually changed the name of its board from Board of Directors to Board of Trustees a couple of years ago, because we wanted to make that subtle shift for our board members to understand that they weren't there to just tell management what to do and then expect them to jump. You've got these resource-challenged organizations. You're looking at your board to add assets to you as opposed to direct, and they're entrusted with the future of the organization. So, we didn't just change the name. We also had, sort of a long philosophical discussion with the board, and those that we bring on today, I think, have a good understanding of what it is that they're asked to do.
Well, I know one big distinction of some nonprofits, I believe yours too, is if an individual gets selected to a board, a for-profit one, they generally get paid in various amounts. Your board and other nonprofit boards, they actually have to pay.
That's exactly right. And so when you have people who come in and they're used to, if they're a very senior person and they've had all their travel expenses paid and they've had all of their, they get just paid to sit in a meeting, it's quite a rude awakening. So in addition to looking for people who understand the fiduciary responsibility, we obviously also are looking for people who have a passion for what we do, who really get the idea that kids need to grow up in families, and that if we don't help them do that, who is going to? And who's going to pay, which is going to be us in society long term.
Well, I think we've kind of touched on it, but how then do you create, like I compare a lot of things to sports teams, how do you create a winning culture?
Well, I think that people have to feel that they're heard, first of all. They have to feel trusted in the organization, that they can speak up. For people who come to work in a non-for-profit, whether it's on a paid basis or a volunteer basis, they are not going to be getting the same monetary rewards that, as a staffer they would get in a for-profit and as a board member in a for-profit board. So they really have to feel like they're part of this entire piece. So they have to feel safe, and they have to feel like they can be heard, and that when they're heard, and they have to be inspired to be able to sort of do the best they can. Means that you've got to be able to give them support and resources, and that is probably among the most challenging thing. Taking you back to the answer's money, what's the question? Getting those resources for people and is really critical.
So you've been.
You don't want them burning.
I'm sorry. You've been in business and nonprofit. We've all had influencers in our life of different kinds. What's one or two potentially that you can think of that have really influenced your career and potentially your life?
Well, clearly in my career today, the kids that we serve were the biggest influencer. I mean, I was exposed to this issue when my business partner adopted a child in Russia and came back telling me stories about, babies in cribs with shaved heads and nobody holding. And then when I was working internationally, I went to an orphanage and got exposed to this issue with older kids, seeing that they were just being warehoused. And I think that that was a tremendous influence on me. I couldn't get these kids out of my mind. I'd been doing a lot of work on social issues and, to create change in the way the public felt and government felt. And here was the most critical issue I'd ever confronted: children growing up without parents and, being cast out on the streets. So that clearly made a huge shift in going from a for-profit into the not-for-profit. Sometimes people ask me why I did it, and I say, well, I just couldn't not. It wasn't that I had intended to start a not-for-profit. In fact, it was really not ever part of my grand plan, but I was so compelled by these children that they made that major shift. My early career was Bill Novelli, who was my mentor, had come from the packaged goods marketing and had started Porter Novelli, where I began my career, and he was an incredible not only marketer and communicator, but he was also a social marketer. I mean, he loved the issues and the causes, and so from a very early part of my career, I became involved in things that I worked on packaged goods as well, but things that really mattered to me and the things that really got me getting up in the morning and going to work were, working on family planning and, AIDS prevention and high blood pressure and cancer prevention. So I think that Bill, who, continues to reinvent himself from going from Porter Novelli to CARE to the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids to running AARP, and now working on dignified end-of-life scenarios at Georgetown, is someone who, has continued to be an inspiration because he grows and grows and grows all the time. He's mid-70s now, and he's still creating change every day. So that's a big influence for me.
There's somebody I'd like to interview.
Oh, he is an amazing person. I will get you in contact with him. What a leader.
Fantastic. Let me ask you, young people, they're starting out their careers, they're wondering, they're wondering about making money, buying a house, advancing, this and that. How do you at what point do young leaders, or should they start preparing to participate with nonprofits, getting involved, potentially even getting on boards?
Well, I just had some kids in New Jersey, the third grade class in Fanwood, who did a lemonade stand for KidSave and started getting involved. I don't think it's ever too early to get anybody involved. You want to start building that. I think we need to, as parents, we need to build that among our kids at home. We've got to get that concept of volunteering, because that's what really differentiates the United States from many other cultures. And many countries in which I work a lot in Russia, and they just don't have the concept even of volunteering, which is what really makes our country, as great as it is. For young people coming into business, the experience they get from volunteering, because again, we've got these resource-challenged organizations that if there's someone with talent who comes in and is willing to really put forth some effort, they get the opportunity to do things that they probably wouldn't get to do in their paid job at much faster and being able to really experience growth more quickly. So I would say that as soon as they can, they should start volunteering, and not just the one thing that I see about the way a lot of people volunteer today is they do the onesies. In Russia they want to go paint the orphanage wall. Here they want to go volunteer at one of our events. Sure, you can do that, but that's not going to help them to grow. I mean, I would recommend for young people that were thinking about, both getting skills, getting networks, and also preparing themselves if they wanted to become a leader in a board at some point. And they need to find out what they're passionate about. See, you can shop around a little bit, but see what they're interested in, and then go and volunteer consistently. Get into one organization and try to, it's sort of contra to what, the task-oriented versus the, project-oriented people are today. But to find an organization and really, get in there, and then volunteer to do some of the stuff that not everybody wants to do, because they can really shine in those aspects if they're willing to do it. Volunteer to go make the report to the committee, to the board meeting, give themselves some visibility, and people are looking for that kind of leadership. Not only that, if they start, getting involved with people who are on boards,
Absolutely.
those people have networks into business opportunities for them, as well as the not-for-profit piece.
Well, there's no doubt I got a lot of value when I came down to the States, and people told me I took a pay cut, moved to a different country, joined the nonprofit. What kind of career move was that?
Right.
But it was a spectacular return on investment. I made great international relationships, learned a ton, and not to sound corny, but there's no better feeling than if you're helping like that, and truly are making a difference. So it pays back in massive ways.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times too, for people who are just starting their careers, they're sometimes not getting to do the most interesting things in their job. They're doing that plodding stuff quite often, and so just that change of pace and the ability to get in, really dig your teeth into something meaningful, I think is it revitalizes you as well.
Yeah, I remember doing some of those things like licking envelopes, stuffing stuff, things like that.
Sure, absolutely. Exciting work.
I've been there
Too,
but it makes for great memories, that's for sure. And you have great conversations while you're licking the envelopes as well.
Absolutely, and you meet some great people. The other thing that all non-for-profits need fundraising capabilities.
Right.
So it's a great place for, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to do fundraising." That's it. But it's a great place for somebody who's really looking to gain some experience to get in and, start making those calls, those solicitations, those sponsorship requests, going to those meetings. One of the things that somebody very smart once said to me is, never leave your passenger seat empty. And it is true, that's one of the opportunities too. You've got a volunteer coming in and you can take them with you. So if it's a young volunteer who's just trying to really learn, same with staff, but you take them with you and they get to see how you present and then they get to learn those skills. And so it really is a win-win for everybody.
No, I totally agree. This is an old question we've all heard before, I guess. Past or present admired leader, anyone that you have ever wished you could have or would like to have dinner with?
I think that Mother Teresa. I mean, I'm sure everybody says her, or at least, no, I'm sure probably everybody doesn't. But
no, some people do.
The things that she has done for people, the selflessness, with grace. There's people who do selfless things, but it doesn't appear to have the grace that she had. She and Muhammad.
I always find there's so many teachers that actually make a difference and they never find out what happened. It's almost the same thing.
Exactly.
So good choice. So some little personal questions here. Not too personal, but a little personal. Like, do you have a favorite sport?
Well, in my advanced age, my two
advanced
sports that are
age,
left, my two sports that are left are basically swimming and spinning. The backs and all that can't do the hard balls and the tennis and all that. So I swim and I spin. Those are the ones that I'm involved in, and I teach spinning actually. It's a great distraction from my normal life, and so I spend a lot of my weekends, creating playlists to teach spinning.
That's awesome. Swimming and spinning.
I like this as well.
I love it. Do you have a favorite movie or show or TV show?
Well, because I'm escaping from everything. I think that one of the movies that I love, have always loved, is Love Actually.
Oh yeah.
It's it's not a great piece of literature necessarily, but it does talk about what should be important. So I could watch that multiple times. Guys will watch movies again and again and again, and women don't tend to do that as much. But I could watch that movie multiple times. And then in terms of my favorite TV show, it's got to be 24.
Oh man, I love 24.
I'm so sad the season just ended.
Oh, I saw there was repeats, and I heard they were going to come back with it. And well, part of the reason also is his father's from Canada and whatnot, so you got to give a shout out for that a little bit. But first time I saw that show, it totally grabbed me. It was unbelievable.
I didn't pick it up until season 6, and my husband and I went back and power watched from season 1 to season 7. And then they just did bring it back, and they had 12 episodes that just ended, and they were great. Now I just have to wait again until they come back.
I like that, power watching. You got to remember that. Nice. Do you have a favorite type of music?
Pretty eclectic, especially now that I'm teaching spin, because I'm looking for those. But I like a lot of alternative, and I am definitely a jazz fan as well.
Awesome. And last but not least, while you're listening to the jazz, favorite type of food?
Favorite versus the kind that I eat. I love Italian. Non mi cuore sono italiana, but I limit myself on that, sadly, because I'd weigh 150 pounds if I ate it as much as I'd like to. So love fish and seafood too. That's the kind of food that's what I call my food.
Good for you. Well, definitely appreciate the time. Congratulations on doing some great work. It takes I don't know, it takes a special person to do what you do, but you've got to love it and have the passion for it, and you obviously do. So continued success, and thank you so much.
And give a shout out to your listeners if there are people who are interested in becoming, part of a leadership of an organization that's working to move kids into families and create change in the way the governments take care of these kids. We'd like to talk to them.
We'll do that, and as you know, we do a lot of board work too, so we might be able to assist you with that as well. That'll be me and Mike's pleasure.
That'd be great, Mark. Thanks so much.
Have
Take
a great
care.
day.
Bye now.